Have you ever stopped to think about how Rome rose to become one of the most magnificent and enduring empires in history? Behind every conquered territory, every legendary battle, and every strategic advance, there was an elite group of extraordinary generals, masters of the art of war, who knew how to lead entire legions to unimaginable victories. In this video, we will explore the 7 most powerful and influential generals in Roman military history. Men who not only won battles, but also redefined the very notion of power, loyalty, and leadership. Get ready to learn about the feats, strategies, and sacrifices of these true titans of history, whose decisions shaped the destiny of Rome and forever marked the trajectory of the ancient world. If you want to understand how Rome became the giant it was, and what these great leaders can teach us even today, then this video is for you. Join me on this epic journey through the heart and mind of the greatest generals of all time. Discover the story of Scipio Africanus. In ancient Rome, a frightening threat was rising. The city of Carthage, a powerful empire in North Africa, was Rome's rival and had an unbeatable war leader, Hannibal. This man was famous for his bold strategies, but above all for his peculiar army, which included war elephants. Just imagine, enormous creatures, clad in metal armor and with sharp tusks, advancing across the battlefield, trampling everything in their path and spreading terror wherever they went. To the Romans, these elephants seemed like monsters straight out of legends, ready to destroy anyone who tried to stop them. No one had ever faced such a force. Well, no one except Scipio Africanus. Have you ever tried to understand the wars that made Rome the greatest empire in the world, only to get lost in so many confusing details? If so, you're not alone. Imagine finally mastering the most important details that shaped Rome, learning the strategies of great generals like Julius Caesar and Scipio Africanus, and understanding how these maneuvers changed the course of history. Knowing the difficulty of finding this information, I made my digital book, The 10 Battles That Shaped the Roman Empire, available, where you'll access all of this clearly and directly. Understand how Rome won impossible battles, discover curiosities that you won't find elsewhere, and become an expert in Roman military history. Check the pinned comment and get yours now, as our units are running out. Publius Cornelius Scipio, or Scipio Africanus, as he would come to be known, was a young but extremely astute general. He knew that to defeat Hannibal, he would need more than bravery. He would need intelligence, patience, and a brilliant strategy. For days, he analyzed everything he knew about Hannibal and his feared army. He understood that the elephants were a powerful weapon, but he also knew they were animals. And, like animals, they could be frightened, confused, and perhaps even used against their own Carthaginian handlers. Thus, Scipio began training his soldiers in a very different way. Instead of simply forming a front line, he organized his troops into long, narrow columns, creating corridors within the ranks. These corridors were not common in battles, but Scipio designed them with a specific plan in mind. He wanted to give the elephants a clear path to pass without trampling his soldiers. However, the plan didn't end there. Scipio had a sound surprise he intended to use to turn the tide. Finally, the day of the great battle, the famous Battle of Zama, arrived. On one side were Scipio's soldiers, with their organized columns, ready for their leader's strategy. On the other side was Hannibal's army, bringing with it the terrifying sight of the elephants. The Roman soldiers were tense, some even afraid, but Scipio maintained focus and confidence. He knew that his plan could work, as long as everyone followed exactly what he had ordered. When the elephants began to advance, Scipio gave the signal, and the battlefield was filled with a deafening sound. Roman trumpets blared loudly, and the soldiers shouted in unison, creating a noise that echoed across the plain. This sound had a purpose: to scare the elephants. And it worked. The enormous creatures used to frightening humans found themselves faced with something that left them confused and terrified. Some elephants began to run wildly, not knowing where to go. Some of them, gripped by panic, turned back towards their own Carthaginian lines, causing chaos and panic among Hannibal's soldiers. Others fell into traps set along the corridors, getting stuck or injuring themselves. But Scipio's plan was more than that. With the elephant's path clear through the corridors, he allowed some to pass, moving on without harming his soldiers. When the elephants were finally out of control, Scipio knew it was the perfect moment to attack. He gave the command, and the Roman soldiers surged forward with all their strength. Now they had the advantage. With the Carthaginians confused and without the protection of the elephants, the Romans attacked mercilessly. The battle was long and filled with intense moments. Swords crossed in the air, shields clashed, and the ground trembled under the weight of the struggle. The Romans were determined, for they knew they were fighting not just for victory, they were fighting for the future of Rome. Hannibal, even being a genius of war, could not prevent the fate of his army that afternoon. As the sun began to set, it was clear that Rome had won. Scipio Africanus, with his innovative strategy and courage, ensured that the Republic of Rome remained strong and powerful. After the victory, he would be remembered as one of the greatest generals in Roman history, the one who, with intelligence and audacity, turned the tide and defeated the feared Hannibal at the Battle of Zama. Make sure to remember the name and image of this channel, so you can always return to this reliable source. Now see if you have already subscribed, because here you will find rigorously researched and presented facts about one of the most influential civilizations in history. Now I will tell you the story of Gaius Marius. Gaius Marius was a man with a vision ahead of his time, a general who saw the potential of Rome beyond its borders. He knew that to transform Rome into a powerful empire, he would have to strengthen the army. But at that time, only men who owned land and wealth could enlist and serve. This limited Rome, excluding a vast portion of the population who, although without possessions, were full of willingness and desire to fight for Rome. Marius realized that the solution was right there, in the streets and villages, among the common men, those who had no property but had everything to gain by serving the Republic. It was then that Marius decided to change the rules. He proposed that any Roman citizen, even without owning land, could join the army. This change seemed simple, but it had a massive impact. Now the army was not just composed of soldiers from wealthy families. It became the army of the Roman people. Peasants, artisans, and laborers began to enlist, driven by the hope of a better life and the chance to gain land and wealth after the battles. For many, serving Rome was the only opportunity to escape poverty and find a greater purpose. And for Rome, this meant thousands of new soldiers, all loyal to the general who gave them this chance. But Marius did more than just open the doors of the army. He also brought a new discipline. He knew that these men, inexperienced in combat, would need extensive training to face the threats Rome was encountering. So he established a rigorous training regime, making each soldier carry his own equipment during long marches. These soldiers became known as Marius's mules. As like pack animals, they were responsible for everything they carried, their weapons, provisions, and even their own tent. This intense training turned the Roman army into an efficient and self-sufficient war machine. Now soldiers no longer relied on a large apparatus to move the army. They could advance quickly, ready for any battle. And this new army would soon be tested against powerful enemies. The first major threat that Marius faced with his new army was from the Germanic tribes advancing on Rome. Among these tribes were the Teutons, a warrior people known for their strength and courage. They were descending from the Alps like an overwhelming wave, destroying villages and directly threatening Rome. It was a fierce army, accustomed to the cold and mountains, filled with strong and determined warriors. For the Roman people, the Teutons were a living nightmare, a danger that seemed impossible to stop. But Marius was not intimidated. He knew that his army, now strengthened and well-trained, was ready to face any challenge. Tell me in the comments if you knew any of these Roman generals and if we forgot to mention any. And when we talk about great generals, we can't forget Lucius Cornelius Sulla. He was a commander with a unique vision of how wars should be won. He was not the type of leader who believed that brute force was everything. For him, intelligence and strategy were just as essential as swords and shields. At a time when many Roman generals tried to win their battles by the number of soldiers, Sulla believed that victory could be achieved in unexpected ways, sometimes even without direct combat. And it was with this mindset that he entered the Jugurthine War, a conflict that seemed impossible to resolve. At that time, Rome was facing Jugurtha, the king of Numidia. Jugurtha was a cunning adversary, someone who knew how to use the territory and his allies to his advantage. Whenever Rome tried to capture him, he would disappear into the desert or hide with his allies, eluding the Romans like a shadow. The pursuit was exhausting. Soldiers marched for days under the scorching heat, facing quicksands and ambushes, but always ended up returning empty-handed. For the Roman generals, Jugurtha was a real headache, an almost unreachable enemy. It was then that Sulla had a different idea. Instead of continuing this relentless pursuit of Jugurtha, he realized he could attack the problem in another way, by targeting Jugurtha's support base. And so he began to focus on King Bocchus of Mauritania, one of Jugurtha's strongest allies. Sulla knew that if he could convince Bocchus to betray Jugurtha, he would have Rome in his hands. But this task would not be easy, as Bocchus and Jugurtha had deep bonds of trust and alliance. However, Sulla was a master of persuasion and diplomacy. He began to meet with Bocchus in secret meetings, away from the eyes of other commanders and soldiers. Each meeting was a silent battle, where Sulla used his words as a weapon. He spoke carefully, praised Bocchus, and little by little, planted the seed of doubt in the king's mind. Sulla promised Bocchus great rewards and the support of Rome. With a Roman alliance, Bocchus could gain more land, more power, and the respect of the empire. Furthermore, Rome was a valuable ally. Allying with them meant standing alongside the greatest power of the time. For weeks, Sulla continued these secret negotiations, always maintaining a calm and firm demeanor, gradually gaining Bocchus's trust, until at a decisive moment, Bocchus finally yielded. He agreed to betray Jugurtha and hand over the king of Numidia to the Romans. It was an agreement sealed without a single sword being raised, without a single Roman soldier needing to risk himself on the dangerous lands of Numidia. Jugurtha was captured by surprise, with no time to escape or defend himself. When Sulla returned to Rome, bringing Jugurtha as a prisoner, the city erupted in celebration. The Senate welcomed him with honors, impressed by the clever way he ended a war that seemed endless. He showed Rome that sometimes victory could be achieved with the mind, through diplomacy and trust, and not just with brute force. Sulla was not just a commander. With every step, he became a powerful and influential figure in Rome. If you are enjoying this content and believe that these stories of Rome are helping you better understand the empire that shaped the world, don't forget to give it a like. This not only helps spread the true history of Rome to more people, but it also ensures that YouTube shows you more videos like this one. So give a like and strengthen this journey of historical discoveries. Now let me tell you the story of the great general, Gnaeus Pompeius Magnus, later known as Pompey the Great. He was not just a skilled general, he was a living legend of Rome. From a young age, Pompey showed signs that he was destined for greatness. He was a man of great ambition and military talent, with a sense of strategy that few could match. He quickly rose through the ranks of Rome, accumulating victories and recognition. But it was in his battles against the pirates that Pompey truly distinguished himself and became a hero in the eyes of the people. At that time, the Mediterranean was infested with pirates. They were sea bandits who terrorized merchants, attacked coastal cities, and plundered everything they could. For the Romans, these pirates were a true nightmare, disrupting the supply routes of food and wealth that sustained the city. Just imagine boats loaded with wheat, wine, and oil being robbed in the middle of the sea, while people in Rome were left without basic supplies. No one knew how to confront the pirates, and it seemed they were always one step ahead of the Roman forces. It was then that the Senate decided to give Pompey a special mission, to eliminate the threat of the pirates once and for all. It was a gigantic task, and many believed that even Pompey would fail. But Pompey the Great accepted the challenge with confidence. He knew he would need a careful strategy to defeat the pirates, since the sea was their territory, and they knew every nook where they could hide. Pompey divided the Mediterranean into several zones, each patrolled by different squadrons of Roman ships, forming a great net of capture. With speed and organization, he began to corner the pirates in all directions, making any escape impossible. He attacked with precision, and within months the sea was safe again. The people of Rome were ecstatic. Pompey had done the impossible and freed the Mediterranean from the pirates, restoring security and trade to Rome. But Pompey's fate was just beginning to unfold. His fame and power grew so much that he ended up forming a powerful alliance called the First Triumvirate, alongside Julius Caesar and Crassus, two of the most influential men of the time. This alliance was formed to ensure that together they would maintain control of Rome, supporting one another and strengthening their political and military interests. With this union, they dominated Rome, like a trio of giants, each with their own area of influence and power. For a time, the triumvirate functioned well, and Rome seemed invincible. But like many great alliances, the triumvirate began to crack. Caesar, who was achieving glory in lands in Gaul, became extremely popular among the people and soldiers, which began to unsettle Pompey. The rivalry between the two grew, fueled by ambition and distrust, until the tension finally erupted into open conflict. Rome was divided, and a devastating civil war began. On one side was Caesar, with his loyal soldiers and his growing fame. On the other was Pompey, with all the experience and authority he had accumulated over the years. The war was marked by bloody battles, where Romans fought against Romans, divided by their loyalty to these two powerful leaders. Pompey believed he could defeat Caesar, but Caesar was a cunning commander and had the loyalty of his army. The decisive battle took place at Pharsalus in Greece. Pompey led a large army, but Caesar, with superior strategy and an extremely motivated army, emerged victorious. Pompey, the great hero of Rome, was forced to flee. He sought refuge in Egypt, but betrayed and unsupported, he was assassinated upon arrival. Thus ended the life of Pompey, one of the greatest leaders Rome ever knew. His journey from victories against the pirates to his tragic end marked the history of Rome and paved the way for Caesar to become the most powerful man in the empire. And don't forget to grab your digital book, 10 Battles That Shaped the Roman Empire. It's very important that you get it now before the units run out. Now let's talk about one of the most well-known generals of all time, Julius Caesar. He was a man who seemed destined for great deeds. From a young age, he displayed sharp intelligence and a charisma that attracted people to him. He had a vision of Rome as a vast empire, extending over lands that many Romans didn't even know existed. And it was with this grand vision that Caesar began his career, showing a courage and ambition that did not go unnoticed. Over the years, Caesar distinguished himself in battles and political alliances. But his true test came when he took command of the legions in Gaul. Gaul, a region made up of warrior tribes, was a wild and untamed territory north of Rome. Many had tried to conquer these lands before, but none had succeeded in taming them. Caesar, however, saw Gaul as the key to expanding Rome's borders and making it even more powerful. With his legions by his side, he embarked on a campaign that would last almost a decade, facing fierce tribes and challenging terrain. During this campaign, Caesar demonstrated not only his military talent, but also a determination of iron. He and his soldiers crossed freezing rivers, faced dense forests, and endured harsh winters. Each victory brought Rome a little closer to conquering Gaul, and each battle further strengthened Caesar's name among the Romans. One of the most memorable battles was against Vercingetorix, the leader of the Gallic tribes, who was also a great strategist and a fearless warrior. They faced each other in the Battle of Alesia, where Caesar, despite being outnumbered, surrounded the Gauls in their fortress, cutting off their supplies and patiently waiting for hunger and despair to drive the enemies to surrender. With the victory at Alesia, Caesar consolidated Roman dominance over Gaul. Now he was more than just a general. He was a living legend. But Gaul was not enough for him. Caesar knew that to maintain his position and expand his influence, he needed to go beyond what any Roman had done before. And so he embarked on a new expedition, this time to the distant and mysterious island of Britain. Few Romans knew what lay in that faraway land, but Caesar decided to take his troops across the English Channel and establish Rome's presence on those unexplored islands. He became the first Roman general to cross the Channel and invade Britain, adding another conquest to his name and further increasing his fame. These victories, however, brought consequences. With each new triumph, Caesar gained more power and more support from the legions and the people of Rome. But in the Roman Republic, absolute power was something to be feared and disapproved of. His former allies, especially Pompey, who had previously been part of a powerful triumvirate alongside Caesar and Crassus, now saw him as a threat. The alliance between Caesar and Pompey began to fracture, quickly turning into a dangerous rivalry. Pompey and the senators feared that Caesar was accumulating too much power, that he was becoming someone who could challenge the laws of the Republic. When the Senate ordered Caesar to abandon his army and return to Rome as a common citizen, he refused. In an act of defiance that would change the history of Rome forever, Caesar and his troops crossed the Rubicon River, the legal boundary between his province and Roman territory. This moment would go down in history as by crossing the Rubicon, Caesar openly declared war on Pompey and the Senate. "The die is cast," he said, knowing there would be no turning back. The conflict that followed was a brutal civil war, where Romans fought against Romans, divided between those who supported Caesar and those who remained loyal to Pompey and the Senate. Bloody battles were fought throughout Italy and beyond, until Caesar finally defeated Pompey and his allies. With Pompey dead and the Senate weakened, Caesar returned to Rome not only as a victor, but as the most powerful man in the Roman world. In Rome, Caesar was met with cheers. For some, he was a hero who had given Rome new lands and wealth. For others, he was a threat, someone who could end the Republic and become a king. These concerns grew, and a conspiracy began to take shape among the senators themselves. Many of them, fearing that Caesar was leading Rome down a path of no return, decided they needed to act. On a March morning, known as the Ides of March, Caesar was betrayed by those he considered allies. He was surrounded and attacked in the Senate, and his last words were said to have been directed at one of the traitors. Et tu, Brutus. With his death, the Roman Republic entered a new era of chaos and disputes, and Caesar's dream of a unified empire remained unfulfilled. But his life and accomplishments stand as a landmark, an example of how one man can change the course of history, even if in the end, the price to pay is his own life. And always remember, whenever you want a reliable source for Roman stories, just keep the name and image of this channel in mind so you can always return to this trustworthy source. Now see if you've already subscribed, because here you will find rigorously researched and presented facts about one of the most influential civilizations in history. Now let's meet Mark Antony. He was one of the most loyal men to Julius Caesar. From the beginning of his military career, he fought alongside Caesar and proved his worth in battles, gaining respect for both his deeds and his bold, charismatic demeanor. He was a trusted officer, someone Caesar knew he could count on in critical moments. When Caesar was assassinated in a shocking coup within the Senate, it was Antony who rose to defend his memory and ensure that the assassins did not go unpunished. He inflamed the people of Rome with a powerful speech, a speech that ignited the desire for justice and revenge against those who betrayed the great leader. With Caesar's death, Rome found itself in a period of turbulence, with power fragmented among his allies and political heirs. It was then that the Second Triumvirate was formed, an alliance between Mark Antony, Octavian, the young nephew and adopted heir of Caesar, and Lepidus, another trusted general. Together, the three divided control of Rome, but each of them wanted more power and influence. Mark Antony was put in charge of the eastern region of the empire, where he soon encountered someone who would forever change the course of his life, the Queen of Egypt, Cleopatra. Cleopatra was a powerful and fascinating woman, a shrewd leader who ruled Egypt with grace and strength. She had already met Julius Caesar in the past and had a relationship with him that resulted in a son, Caesarion. Now upon meeting Mark Antony, a new alliance and an epic romance began to take shape. The attraction between Antony and Cleopatra was instantaneous, and soon they were side by side, ruling together, uniting their destinies in an alliance aimed at strengthening the power of both. However, for many in Rome, this union was viewed with suspicion and even as a betrayal. Antony and Cleopatra were not just partners in governance, they were in love with each other, and this passion fueled their desire to build an empire that rivaled the power of Rome. Cleopatra supported Antony with her vast wealth and armies, and together they began to expand their control over the East. However, this alliance and the couple's growing power aroused the wrath and envy of Octavian, who saw Antony as a dangerous rival. Octavian, who was consolidating his own power in Rome, began to spread rumors and propaganda against Antony, accusing him of straying from Roman values and being completely under Cleopatra's influence. Antony and Cleopatra fought bravely, but Octavian's forces were superior, and their strategies were infallible. Gradually, Antony's forces were pushed back, and defeat seemed inevitable. Amid the chaos of battle, Cleopatra, fearing capture, ordered the withdrawal of her fleet to Egypt. Antony, seeing Cleopatra's retreat, felt betrayed and shaken. but still decided to follow her. Defeated, they returned to Egypt, where they prepared for one last desperate effort against Octavian's forces, which were now advancing toward the land of the pharaohs. But fate was sealed. When Octavian arrived in Egypt, Antony and Cleopatra knew that the end was near. They could be captured and taken to Rome as prisoners, humiliated before the Roman people. Unable to bear the idea of being defeated and displayed as trophies, Antony and Cleopatra made a final decision. Antony, in an act of honor and despair, took his own life beside his beloved. Cleopatra, for her part, also chose the same fate, refusing to be a display piece in Octavian's victory. With the death of Antony and Cleopatra, the Roman Empire consolidated its control over Egypt, and Octavian became the supreme ruler of Rome, receiving the title of Augustus. But the story of Mark Antony and Cleopatra, marked by passion, loyalty, and tragedy, remains one of the most powerful tales of love and loyalty in ancient Rome. So, what do you think of the great Roman generals so far? Tell me in the comments if you knew any of them, and if you have any curiosities to share about them. Now, I will reveal the last Roman general who changed the history of Rome, Marcus Vipsanius Agrippa. He was more than just a man of Rome. He was the right-hand man of Octavian, who would later become Emperor Augustus. Agrippa and Octavian had a friendship that began in their youth and only strengthened over the years. Agrippa was a natural strategist, loyal and intelligent, someone Augustus trusted without reservation. It was this partnership that helped shape Rome during its greatest glory, both in battles and in the city's very structure. As the Roman Empire began to expand, Octavian knew he needed someone strong by his side to protect Rome and its conquests. Agrippa took on this responsibility with dedication. He was not just a field general, he was the man who managed everything that kept the empire united and strong, from naval defense to improvements in the infrastructure of Rome itself. During one of the greatest threats to the empire, Agrippa was responsible for defeating Sextus Pompey, who threatened Rome's supply routes and put the food supply coming from the sea at risk. Agrippa knew that the Roman navy needed to be strong and well organized to win. He assembled a powerful fleet of ships and strategically positioned it, dividing the sea into zones of control like an invisible net to protect each maritime route. With his leadership and precision, he was able to eliminate the threat posed by Sextus Pompey, restoring safety at sea and ensuring that Rome continued to receive the necessary resources to thrive. The victory against Pompey was one of Agrippa's great military achievements, but his role in Rome went far beyond the battles. Agrippa was known for personally supervising construction projects, always attentive to detail and ensuring that each new building was robust and durable. He not only expanded the Aqua Marcia aqueduct, which brought fresh, high-quality water to Rome, but also renovated other aqueducts, ensuring that the city had an efficient water distribution system. This water was essential for supplying homes, public baths, and fountains, making Rome a vibrant and healthy city. The citizens of Rome could live in a clean city with running water, something that few cities in the world could offer at that time. But Agrippa went further, also creating spaces for leisure and community for the people. He built gardens, renovated temples, and organized festivals for the entertainment of the Romans. For Agrippa, a city was not just a place of stone and concrete. It was a space where people lived, worked, and had fun. He wanted Rome to be a symbol of power and culture, a place where people could find beauty even in their daily lives. Alongside Augustus, Agrippa helped transform Rome into the metropolis we know today, filled with monuments, fountains, and structures that have become symbols of Roman greatness. He worked tirelessly, seeking no recognition, always loyal to his friendship with Augustus and the well-being of the Roman people. So, did you enjoy learning about these incredible generals who shaped the military history of Rome? Each one, with their strategy, courage, and achievements, demonstrated that Rome's power did not come solely from weapons, but also from the intelligence and determination of extraordinary leaders. And guess what? If you think you've seen it all, there's more to come. In the upcoming videos, we will dive into the feats of the 7 most powerful generals of Rome, those who truly shaped the empire with their decisions and battles. So, stay tuned to not miss anything. And remember, whenever you want accurate stories about Rome, just grab your digital book 10 battles that shaped the Roman Empire. Go to the pinned comment and get yours. Our units are running out, so make sure to secure yours today. If you enjoyed this content and want to keep following these fascinating stories, now is the time to subscribe to the channel and leave your like. This way you help us bring more quality content to you. See you in the next video.